A lot of Eagles talk, a lot of NFL talk to get into today. So, of course, this time every day we have 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider and FanRag Sports NFL columnist John McMullen. As the Eagles have decided, well, we're not going to wait around. We're going to start moving on from guys now. We saw even before the guys showed up, Dorial Green-Beckham, all right, you're out of town. And now today the Eagles have moved on from Marcus Smith and Alan Barbre. So we'll bring John in to start the conversation. John, how you doing today? Let's try that again. John, I didn't pot you up at first. So that's my bad.
You got a lot of jobs going there, Josh. No problem.
It's all
doing
good.
well. How are you guys?
Doing good. So let's start with the news off the top. The Eagles, it looks like they're going to save $3.6 million against the cap. Moving on from Barbre and Smith. We expected Smith. He's only had 4 sacks in 3 years. But Barbre, we were expecting to possibly be the kind of backup guard, backup tackle, versatile guy. And we know how much the Eagles value that versatility. So talk about what went into moving on from these guys so early in the process for the season.
Well, the Marcus Smith aspect wasn't a surprise because he was due a significant signing roster bonus actually by Saturday, about just under $600,000. So that was pretty evident. The Eagles were going to move on from him pretty early in the process. And that went as expected. But the Barbre news, that was a big surprise to everyone, and that kind of caught us all off guard. And it was weird because earlier this week, Doug Peterson kind of, refused to name the starter at left guard. Frank Reich today flat out said Isaac is the starter. And then 2 hours later, all of a sudden, Alan Barbre's released. And then Howie Roseman releases a statement, explains they met, and it's pretty evident that what happened is the Eagles said, look, we want you to be a backup. We have a lot of respect for you. But at Alan's age, he's 33. He played very well last season. He thinks he should be a starter in this league, and he didn't see that possibility here. So I think this one was more of the player kind of forcing the issue, and he didn't want to be around. So the Eagles have a lot of depth on the offensive line, but I think this is a questionable move because of his versatility and his value.
John, as you look into your crystal ball a little bit, and this kind of stuff happens during training camp, you get guys released as you approach certain things later on. This was a little bit early, as you said, to have something like this happen with Barbre, but do you see in your crystal ball any more players that potentially could be handed their walking papers, sometime in the next week or so?
I don't know about walking papers, but there's little whispers that Jordan Matthews is having contract issues because he's and we've speculated that in the past, especially after Nelson Aguilar's strong spring. You could envision the Eagles kind of moving on from Jordan Matthews after this season. He enters it as a lame duck, and I don't think he's happy about that. So we'll see. The veterans reported today. We got to see a lot of them in the locker room, but Jordan wasn't among them. So we'll see how that shakes out over the next couple days. But clearly there's a little concern from his standpoint that this is a lame duck year for him.
How about, so you make it sound like you wouldn't be surprised, and am I hearing you right here that you wouldn't be surprised if he was a holdout?
Well, he's been here. I don't want to use that word. I think until it's evident, I didn't see him at the facility today, but that's no clear indication. There's a number of players I didn't see. That doesn't mean they're not there, but in NFL circles, there been whispers that he's got concerns. So it's just something to keep an eye on. If he's not there Thursday, tomorrow, then the whole thing blows up, and then you're in for a big story.
Can Nelson Aguilar really push Jordan Matthews and take that spot?
Yeah, I don't think so. I really don't. And I'm one of those in the camp that said Nelson showed a lot of promise, at least a lot more confidence in the off season, looked like a different guy. But we've been down that road before. I mean, the athletic ability is there for Nelson Agholor. It's the other things he's had a problem with. And Jordan's been a very, very effective player in the NFL. And even though I'm not sure he's the type of receiver Doug Peterson likes, he'd prefer a more versatile route runner who can play inside and out so he can play with the formations. I think that's the Eagles' issue with Jordan Matthews. Not that he's not a good player. It's just that they kind of pigeonhole him as just a slot receiver. But when he's out there, he's really, really productive. And that's something Nelson Agholor can't say. So I don't believe he'll be pushing him as long as Jordan is here. The question is Jordan going to be happy as a lame duck? And when we mention that holdout word, remember, there's significant fines. So I doubt he's going to hold out for very long. If he does, it might be a one-day type of situation, something of that nature. But when he's here, he's a productive player.
John Deshaun, we talked a lot about this earlier with Jordan Matthews, and I referenced the point that if you're Jordan Matthews, you look what the Eagles did last year in signing Vinny Curry, signing Lane Johnson, Zach Ertz, and Fletcher Cox, yet he's coming into the last year of his deal, and there's no extension for him. Is it fair to say that he's wondering where is his place in this organization long term?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's what Howie Roseman does. He extends players this organization values early. So Jordan knows that. His agent knows that. So they kind of see the writing on the wall. I've been talking about it for 18 months. This coaching staff does not envision him as the type of receiver they want. And I think ultimately this will be his last season in Philadelphia. And that's what sparked some of the trade rumors in the spring and things of that nature, because it's evident that the Eagles are probably going to move on from Jordan Matthews after this year. While he's here, though, I think they're going to do the best to get as much production out of him as they can.
John, we had Andy Benoit on earlier talking about the MMQB 400 best players in football list. And he had Carson Wentz as the 16th ranked quarterback, 202 overall on the whole list, ahead of guys like Dak Prescott, Sam Bradford, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. Do you agree that he's too high, right in the middle, or too low?
Well, it's some of those names he shouldn't be ahead of. He certainly shouldn't be ahead of Kirk Cousins after the way he's performed. But anytime you do those ratings, you have to understand, what are they trying to do? Are they talking about his ceiling as a player? Certainly higher than Cousins. But right now, as we speak today on this phone call, he's not better than Kirk Cousins. Dak Prescott, I think he has a higher ceiling than him. But last year, Dak was the offensive rookie of the year. Dak was was the quarterback on the 13-3 team. He was the one who was in the playoffs. So I think it's kind of hard to say he had a better season, but I think long term he's better. And the same thing with Sam Bradford. There's a reason the Eagles traded Sam Bradford because they think Carson is the long-term answer. But Sam is the guy who threw 71% of his passes for completions last year. So right now, Sam's probably a tick better. But long-term, you'd certainly rather have Carson Wentz. So I think a lot of that, I can't speak for those guys, but it seems to be projection. And if they're projecting him to be the 16th best quarterback and take a step forward, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it's tough, especially with those names, especially Cousins. For whatever reason, people don't accept the fact, if you're rating the quarterbacks in this division, I got news for you. Cousins is number one, and everybody else is chasing him, including the two-time Super Bowl winner and the offensive rookie of the year.
We're talking with our 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider and FanRag Sports NFL columnist John McMullen here, as we do at this time every day on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, you can check out all of his Eagles coverage day by day, everything you need at 973ESPN.com. And John, as you write at the website, so Isaac Seumalo, on the morning of before they're cutting Alan Barbre, Frank Reich comes out and says Isaac is the starter, and then it's just competition from there. We heard, as you mentioned earlier, John, Doug Peterson kind of inferred it, but he didn't really come out and fully say it. And now Reich says it's basically Seumalu's job to lose. And if I remember right, didn't the Eagles say when they drafted Seumalo, they project him to be the starting center of the future? So if they projected him to possibly be a center down the road, do you view him at left guard as almost like the bridge job to eventually being the center?
I do. That's been the theory around the NovaCare complex for a while, is that whenever Jason Kelce does move along, they see Isaac's best position at center. And we'll see how that shakes out. It's interesting. They talked from the day they drafted Isaac Seumalo, they raved about his versatility. And he ended up playing 4 different positions, even right tackle last year. So he proved he is versatile. But it's interesting. In college, he said he played every position except left guard. And now he's going to be the left guard of the Philadelphia Eagles. So they like him a lot. They think he's really, really smart. He's much more athletic than Alan Barbre. Obviously, he's younger. He's got more tread on the tire. But I'll tell you, Alan was really, really good last season when he was playing. And I think, at least for the short term, there's going to be a little bit of a downtick in production at that particular position. But hopefully, the fact that you have Lane Johnson for every game, hopefully, and everybody else is back, Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelce, Jason Peters, it should still be a top 10 offensive line in this league.
John, one of the things in your day 3 camp notes today, you mentioned that Mack Hollins, who the Eagles drafted, was doing some work on long snapping. And it's interesting because they said you picked it up in high school. And for some people, they say, why is a wide receiver working as a long snapper? But it can't be overlooked that Mack Hollins is 6'4" and 221 pounds. He's not exactly a small guy. And he's also going to be a valuable asset on special teams.
Yeah, he was a great special teams player in college. And even though the Eagles view him as more than that for the future, and they think he could be a really good receiver, that's going to be his role as a rookie. He's going to be on all 4 of Dave Phipps' units, special team units, and he's going to be a backup long snapper. And, hey, the Eagles fans know that's important after what happened last season when John Dornbos got hurt. Brent Selleck was the backup long snapper, wasn't very good at it. He got hurt. And then they were doing sort of tryouts on the sideline during the game. And Trey Burton eventually came in to do it. So it's difficult when you lose your long snapper in game because nobody has a backup. But when I was out in Minnesota covering the Vikings, Jared Allen you would not believe how good he was as a long snapper. If he wasn't a Hall of Fame defensive end, he could have been the best long snapper in football. It's very rare you have a guy who can do it, and Mack has been doing it since high school, and hopefully that gives the team a little bit more of a comfort factor if something disastrous does happen.
John, we talked about guys who could be handed their walking papers at some point. Let's look at the backfield on offense here. You look at LeGarrette Blount, you got Wendell Smallwood, you got Darren Sproles and Pumphrey now here. It just doesn't seem like there's any room for Ryan Matthews. I mean, once he's healthy, is he a guy who's going to be released?
Yeah, he's going to be released as soon as he can pass a physical. And if he can't pass a physical, he'll just be put on injured reserve. And from that standpoint, the Eagles will have to either pay him for the entire season or more likely work out an injury settlement. But there's no question he's not in their plans. even chance he's going to be back, and he may never play football again. He had a neck fusion surgery. So it was a really, really serious injury, and he may never be able to play the game again. But as far as him being on this roster, yeah, I know there's been some talk that he might be back, but that's not going to happen.
And then as you're walking around and you're watching some of these practices, of course, you haven't seen the whole team on the field yet, but you have seen Derek Barnett. How does he look? I heard what Schwartz said about him earlier today, as far as, he needs to develop a second move, things like that. But how's he look as he's trying to build himself up into here to possibly being a starter on this team?
Well, yeah, they're concerned about that second move, the counter move, because you can kind of get away with things at the college level, even in the SEC. But if you look at this division at left tackle specifically, you have maybe the two best left tackles in football. And Jason Peters is probably top 5 that he's got to deal with in practice. Trent Williams in Washington, Teron Smith in Dallas, that's as good as it gets. And if you keep throwing fastballs, Jim Schwartz loves the baseball analogy. If you keep throwing fastballs at those guys, you might throw one by them, but they're going to adjust pretty quickly, and they're going to dominate you. So he's got to develop those counter moves, but that's like every rookie, basically, has got to go through that process. And the Eagles have done nothing but rave about Derek Barnett, and he's a really, really hard worker. Between minicamp and training camp, he was working with Chuck Smith, the famous pass rushing guru who used to play for the Falcons, and now he's sort of the go-to guy for pass rushers around this league. He was working with him in Atlanta. So he wants to be good, and I think he ultimately will be, but it's a process when you're a rookie in this league, and especially when you, as I said, you look at this division. For 4 games, you got to really, really hard if you're trying to play right defensive end.
As you look at the last 3 days, which was just rookies, selected veterans, and quarterbacks, which player stood out the most to you as far as a guy who maybe he has made some big strides, looked the best, was sharp, didn't make many mistakes? And which one player out of all that group looked the best to you?
Greg Ward has really taken to being a receiver. He was the quarterback at Houston, and he's shifted to receiver here and has been playing in the slot. He's really small. He's 5'11". That's why, obviously, he can't play quarterback in the NFL. But he's just a natural receiver, and it's weird to say that because he played quarterback, but people forget at Houston he arrived there as a wide receiver and switched to quarterback. And when I was talking to him during minicamp, he mentioned he always had NFL aspirations, and he mentioned after practice every day they would turn the tables and the receivers would throw him footballs because he wanted to keep sharp. And he wanted to keep his skills, and he's a tremendous athlete. He runs routes better, and he understands the entirety of the offense because he was playing quarterback. So he kind of has a feel for everything, and he's been really, really good to the point where if this team decides to keep 6 receivers, he might be in the mix for that 6th guy if he can do some things on special teams. I certainly think he's going to make the practice squad. But he catches everything, and he's an explosive athlete. So he's been really impressive.
John, you just talked about Greg Ward. Shelton Gibson, the team's 5th-round pick, has struggled throughout every camp that I've been reading about that he's been in. Remember, Hines Ward and Julian Edelman, they both played quarterback in college, and they, in my opinion, and a lot of other people, were successful in the NFL playing wide receiver. So is there a scenario where Greg Ward could possibly switch places with Shelton Gibson in that role if he plays well enough?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I told Mike a bunch, I don't think Shelton Gibson's going to make this team if they were to cut down today. I mean, he's just struggled throughout every camp, OTAs, minicamp, and even early in training camp, the first day he dropped 2 more balls. So he's had a struggle, and he's got the pedigree of being a draft pick, which helps. But guys have outplayed him. Greg Ward's one. Marcus Johnson, who's was on the practice squad last year. He's he's definitely ahead of him on the depth chart. So he's going to have to jump over these players. He's still got time. But to make the 53-man roster, it's an uphill battle for Gibson right now. He'll certainly be on the practice squad. There's no reason to think the Eagles would get rid of him totally. And if they keep 5 receivers, he's got no chance, to be blunt. If they keep 6, as I say, right now he's got to jump over Marcus Johnson. He's got to jump over Greg Ward, and he could argue some other guys as well. He's not played well.
Talk with John McMullen on 97.3 ESPN.com. Eagles Insider also covers the NFL for FanRag Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. John, a couple quick NFL news items real quick here. I was joking that Lucky Whitehead yesterday is unlucky, and I think my semi-joke was confirmed today because Lucky Whitehead has been claimed by the Jets.
Well, hey, you can look at it both ways. Obviously, nobody wants to be on a team that's probably going to overachieve by winning 4 games. But, hey, he's going to get a roster spot on that team.
Oh, yes,
so
he will.
Have an NFL job. So in that way, it is lucky. So you gotta go glasses half full, because the New York Jets certainly need good football players, and it's just the Lucky Whitehead. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. It's such a Dallas thing to do, to finally put your foot down against the guy who did nothing wrong. But then I started thinking about the guy who impersonated Lucky Whitehead, and why pick Lucky Whitehead? There's so many strange parts of that story.
Yeah. Hugh Jackson said today that, quote, Cody Kessler deserves a chance to walk out there first, saying that Cody Kessler is going to enter Browns camp as the starter. And it's not like Kessler was bad last year. He was actually the most serviceable of all the quarterbacks who rolled through there last year. He knows the offense this year. You have Kaiser and Osweiler coming in this year. Neither one of them were even on the team last year. So what are the odds that Kessler could walk into the 2017 season, week 1, as the starter?
I think they're pretty good. I think it's probably 60-40 right now. I mean, they would like Kaiser to win the job because he's the highest ceiling of all the quarterbacks you mentioned. And certainly they would hope that he would be the long-term answer. But he's a rookie second-round pick, so to expect him to excel right away is probably too much to ask for. So I think there's a very good chance Cody Kessler starts week 1, but he's limited. I mean, he doesn't have an NFL arm. It's below average. And, hey, we talk about the Browns and what they did, and people are so excited because they've added so much talent, and I get it. I mean, on paper, their offensive line looks great. Myles Garrett is probably going to be a beast in this league. Jabril Peppers, so many good football players, but they don't have a quarterback. So until they get that position fixed, they're going to be a bad football team.
Real quick, John, and I say this slightly tongue-in-cheek, which former USC quarterback has a more limited arm? Cody Kessler, Matt Leinart, or Mark Sanchez?
Matt Barkley. But don't tell Jimmy Kempski that. He threw a fastball at him once.
I'll keep it our secret.
Yeah, but then he got some guy like Carson Palmer. Hey, he's got well, at least he had. He's 37 now. 30, whatever he is. But he had a gun. So it's not just a USC thing. But yeah, they've come. A number of those quarterbacks coming from that school are not Nolan Ryan, so to speak.
Nah, I remember when, I think it was Matt Leinart's second game in the league, he was throwing into a flat. It was like 2nd and 7. And that must have been the slowest direct pass I have ever seen in my life. And I just remember thinking, my gosh.
Yeah, Matt Leinert's not throwing it through a car wash. And there's another guy who went back, probably would have been the first pick in the draft, decided to go back to school, one of those USC guys, and then ended up being, I think, 11, which is still high, but
yeah, he didn't drop as far as Matt Barkley did.
No. Well, and Matt Barkley, he got hurt, so that was part of it as well. And that might have really affected his arm strength because he had a really significant shoulder injury, and that's why he tumbled. I don't think he's ever regained his arm strength he had in college.
No. He is John McMullen. You can follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. He covers the Eagles for us at 97.3 ESPN.com. So check out his daily updates there, and then he covers the league nationally for FanRag Sports. John, talk to you tomorrow.
Hey, thank you, guys.